Hey, what's up, everybody? Subtractem here. I think this would be just a good time to reflect on the experiences that we went through, the lessons learned, both for ourselves, kind of reflecting on the changes from 3.17 into 3.18, the lack of some changes as well, and the stuff that could be done better. But anyway, let's get started. So, the initial launch. As everyone knows that was there on launch weekend, the Arch-nemesis modifiers were super overtuned. What they did is they took the old rare and bloodlines modifiers and replace them with the Arch-nemesis modifiers that we got in 3.17. Unfortunately, what they did is basically not tune them at all, and they were originally set up such that you could customize up to, I think, 4 or 5 of them at the same time, set them up exactly how you liked, and do them in your own set encounters in a single map, right? Here, it felt like they kind of just like copy-pasted them without any balance changes whatsoever, tossed them in the game, and allowed them to stack up to like 5, 6, 7+ times on a monster without any considerations for how that would affect certain builds or, what that would feel like to actually fight. Particularly if you were a melee character or Righteous Fire or anything like that, or a character that relied very hard on having flash charges, in the case of like Droughtbringer, there were certain combinations definitely of Arch-nemesis modifiers that would just hard brick your build. And it could shut off your build. And especially if these were stacked on essence mobs, this could basically make unkillable boss fights that were just ridiculous for a lot of builds. And this has been a theme for basically every league start since I've started playing this game, since Parandus League, where basically on launch, the league just kind of feels bad no matter what. And I think a lot of that kind of comes from the original philosophy where challenge leagues they were temp leagues. They were just there to basically test modifiers, test different mechanics, and see if they wanted to integrate them into the main standard game. But the way that the game has shook out, over the past 10 years, the vast majority of people only play for the temp leagues, right? Like, they are the main mode of play. There are people that play standard. I won't get into that too much right now. People just play for the exciting 3-month leagues, and most people just play for like 4 to 6 weeks, right? And then that's like the window where most people are actually playing the game. I really think the launch balance issues need to be found earlier. I don't know what the right answer is here, like having small pockets of people that can play. I can tell you from my experience in the game industry that like no matter how much testing you do, in the first couple hours of a launch, there will be more hours of active testing from more passionate players than any company could actually do. Now, there are downsides, right, of trying to outsource that and getting too many eyeballs on it. Whatever the right answer is here, I don't want to like get into too many details. This needs to be addressed. Like, really, that first initial 4 to 8 hour window when a league launches, that will really determine how much people are going to stick with the game. Now, to GGG's credit, they did address it very, very quickly. They triple nerfed Arch-nemesis like day after day after day. And then like a couple weeks later, they did an additional set of nerfs to the point now where it's fine. It's really fine. The difficulty of Arch-nemesis mobs, you don't even notice, right? And there are visual cues. You can tell like, oh, this is the one that has the big blue donut. Now you know that that one's going to be draining your mana if you're standing within the donut. It's really no worse than the old Nemesis modifiers. At the end of the day, it just feels like not much changed, besides the big Headhunter changes, right? Like Headhunter and Inspired Learning, they were changed dramatically, so they can only have one Arch-nemesis modifier at a time. That took a while for them to buff it. Headhunter is now in a pretty good place. The builds that take advantage of it are mostly the same, but slightly different because you're not getting the plus proj as much. Echoist is still kind of annoying, but it's almost the same as it was. A win that I would give GGG here is that for the past couple leagues, there have been basically no issues with stability and performance, like maybe a couple blips here where like you may lose one instance here or there, but I've had very, very few issues with stability. In terms of balance changes and meta changes, there were no changes at all in the patch notes besides some like hidden rarity and other changes like that. And I think that that was basically necessary, at least based on the difficulty of the Arch-nemesis modifiers and the Uber bosses, especially on launch. With how hard that stuff was, trying to figure out new builds, if any existing archetypes got nerfed, I think that just would have been in a really, really bad place. So I think that that's okay. And I do think it's kind of cool for us to have 6 months to experiment and come up with new builds. But as we'll see in a second, that didn't really happen too much. I am a little worried at the high end with the spiky damage that is out there. The ability to roll your maps really, really hard with the new map modifiers and being able to like, with a hat on your Atlas passives, push the difficulty really high. There's really only like 1 or 2 ways to gear your character to be tanky enough to survive any of that. And we have this like very homogenous defensive setup. So hopefully they give us just other defensive options when they start looking at like the meta of the defense that has been very, very, very strong and prominent for the past couple leagues. If we look at the changes from 317 to 318, they are basically exactly the same. You know, this is just end of the league type of stuff, only characters that are like level 99, 100, and just necessarily we're going to kind of see, you know, with no patch changes, we just know it's going to be basically the same builds, right? The only thing that's really changed any of this, right? I think Tornado Shot was able to be at 10% in 317 due to how common Omni is. Like Tornado Shot is one of those skills that like mechanically feels really good, but the numbers are atrociously bad unless you have something that's scaling it like on some crazy level. And Omni allows you to do that. And with how rare Omni and Ashes are, they both hit like 60 to 65x at one point. They've kind of settled around 40. You basically can't do it unless you're willing to buy that 50x amulet. Many, many fewer people are actually building around. I do find Righteous Fire at 14% pretty interesting. I think a lot of that is due to comfort within more difficult stuff, as well as how hard that build has been pushed in the content creator community. You know, RF is always ebbing and flowing. It's always there slightly in the background, in the shadows, behind the curtains, waiting to come out and become meta for a little bit. And yeah, it has this league. It's very interesting to see Righteous Fire being the top dog. All right, let's talk about Sentinels themselves. A lot of people in the community out there were very worried when they first showed Sentinel, between the controller trees and having to breed them and all the different recombinating and all of that type of stuff. It looked like it might be really fiddly. And I think especially a lot of people were burned in Arch-nemesis with how bad that UI was, even after the changes. Almost everyone kind of stops using a lot of leagues when they start getting too irritating, stop picking everything up, like when it's not profitable enough versus the amount of hassle. Sentinel, it really hits that sweet spot of you can tweak your loot filter, so you only care about like Obsidian, maybe Brimstone on the tiers. You only pick up certain ones. You can just like boom, 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 identify, only keep like currency, quant, div card, Sentinel rewards, expedition awards, like the ones that are known to be really good. And then like when you feel like it, you can do like a nice breeding session, and you do a lot of the power core recombinating, the augments. You try to make like really nice Sentinels. They drop so much loot. Probably the best league I've ever played for casual players to make a ton of currency with literally zero investment. If you just breed like decent quantity currency Sentinels, you should very easily be able to get like at least 2 or 3 raw exalts every single hour if you're mapping decently. I think this is the first league since Ultimatum, I miss you Ultimatum, that I've actually wished that it went core. There's a lot of league mechanics that I just find really annoying that I just wish they didn't take core. GGG knows, right? Like they're looking at more creative ways to put, you know, leagues core. And I hope that they consider things like Sentinel more in the future, where it's just that perfect sweet spot of like annoying stuff to pick up, but it gives you enough requisite loot based on how annoying that is, and very easy to ignore if you don't want to pick it up. Yeah, very happy. I think in terms of just the league mechanic, it's basically 10 out of 10. Love Sentinel itself. Recombinated with the Sentinel itself is the Recombinators. I don't think that's really a word. I think Recombinators are awesome. I think anyone that's played around with the Recombinators think they're super, super cool. I am worried about them going core due to, I think, fundamental issues with the way that the economy works in this game, which we'll get to. But yeah, I love them. If you don't know what Recombinators are, is you can take 2 items, you recombinate them, and you get a result based on that. You are able to make new combinations of items that were not possible in the past. You could take 2 items that have essence modifiers or fractures and combine them, and you get 2 essence modifiers or 2 fractures on a single base. Not to mention is that there are also new recombinated mods like +1 power charge, or on body armors, you can get keystones, much like Skin of the Lords. It's really been super, super cool. I think it's awesome for the economy, both in that it adds so much value, right? Like now, if you see like T1 life fracture on a bad base, that fracture alone has value because you could take it off of like a really garbage body armor and put it on a Val Regalia. And now it has value, and it's like, you know, it's really cool. And there's like this inherent value for like, oh, I'm searching for really cool fractured mods or temple mods, or like, oh, maybe there's like essence or veiled mods that I want to transfer onto stuff. It's really, really awesome. It's added so much longevity and interest. And I think one of the best things is it's gotten more and more people into the concept of crafting. It really hits that sweet spot of that mid-level where like, oh, well, I have like 10 to 20x, but I don't want to craft like a 30x item. It's like really risky. but I can buy a bunch of like 5 to 50C items, start recombinating, and then maybe I can hit something really cool and start getting into profit crafting, which I think has kind of been gate kept by the richer people in the game. And I think that, yeah, it's just really good for the game overall. However, I am worried about it going core because of standard. I have a very, very big problem with the way that league economies are dictated, especially after like that 6-week mark. They are hard dictated by everything going into standard league. So we get those standard league players, they really play a lot within the temp league, and they figure out ways to interact with the economy. They have a lot of crafting experience. They get really, really rich. And then they rip all their mirrors to standard when it integrates. The price of everything will converge. Like, we just have this necessary convergence. And so things like headhunters get worth less and less. Things like mirrors get worth more and more as it gets closer to standard, because it's going to roll over. And so the price is just going to start to converge there. And with the big boys playing in the temp leagues, kind of hoarding these items so they can, go to standard and do whatever they do with mirrors and stuff in standard, I'm very, very worried about the possibility, because GGG does balance around like assuming that standard exists, right? The big thing that recombinators can do right now, that is what makes me worried about it going like absolutely core in the game, is you can use it on mirrored items. In standard, where there's thousands upon thousands of mirrors, people are taking like old mirrored like legacy bases, they're mirroring them, right? And so you can constantly be making these copies, and then you can take the copy of the base item and then use that for your recombinating. And you can actually like pull off them. You can take those legacy mods, put them on a non-mirrored base and craft it up. And that's like dramatically changing the standard economy. Personally, for me, I could not care less about standard, like to the point where like I don't mind that it exists, but I hate that it exists because it alters the league economy so much. I am worried about it going core because it does drastically affect the standard economy so much. My suggestion, if GGG is looking to not make recombinators core due to the consequences of the standard economy, would be don't be able to use it on mirrored items. Recombinating with mirrored items in League barely matters. Like, there's so few mirrored items, and if you mirror an item in League, it's already an item that you want to hold on to. It's only affecting like the 0.1%, like who cares, right? So I don't care about it in League, but if it's, not going to go core because you can do it in standard, I would just remove that ability, maybe make recombinators 2.0 if you want to, keep the legacy ones. And I would just love this to go core. All right, challenges. I finished my 40 out of 40 a couple days ago. In retrospect, it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. I did put out a video a couple weeks ago talking about different strategies, ways that you can do your 40 out of 40. They ramped up the difficulty. They ramped up the grind to be requisite with the fact that they're giving you 2 full sets of body armor. Sure, like there's the non-glowy and the glowy version. Like, if you get the glowy version, you're never going to equip the non-glowy one. Like, that was kind of a weird thing. Like, I do wish they were just 2 distinctly different looking body armors instead of, just a recolor. I really enjoy conditional challenges that require some creativity. In Softcore Trade, we were able to do really creative things, like the Searing Exarch challenge, where you had to dodge every single moving ball when he's below 20% life without using travel skills. What you can do is, when he starts the ball phase, just die, find a way to make your character die, lay there until all the balls finish, and then respawn, and then finish them off and kill them with like a call, right? They're like puzzles, especially when they're not that hard. They take 5 or 10 minutes. Like, none of those conditional challenges were too hard. I would say Uber Elder there were a couple like annoying things about Uber Elder, but by and large, I like conditional challenges. There were a couple RNG ones that were just like a little too RNG, like find a harvest boss. For some reason, the duplicate 4 div cards for me took multiple weeks. That one was really, really annoying for me. The ones that are so rare that you may never see it in solo self-found, I think that those should probably be addressed, or maybe find a way that you can like build up to them, right? Like, instead of like, maybe have alternatives, right? Instead of find a harvest boss, like, you could think of it as like a shortcut, do 500 harvests or something like that. Even if you don't find the RNG thing, maybe you're always building up to actually finishing the challenge regardless. Speaking of the grind, I actually think endgame grinds was one of the easiest ones. I chose to do Delve instead of Uber bosses, but I think those were all in reach for most players. The one thing that I would say is the Atlas grinds, which was 1,000 of both Searing Exarch and Eater of Worlds altars, and 200 witness map bosses for Maven. That was a bit much. For not an endgame grinds, I would request cut that in half. Even as like a dedicated full-time player, I found that one, I found that one a bit much. I would cut that one in half. Also, the wings are awful. They look like they're upside down. Please fix that. They look like they're upside down. I don't know why the wings are upside down. Let me reverse them. I will never equip those wings as long as they look like that. It really annoys me. That's why I'm using these wings instead. Speaking of the Uber bosses, I think they're mostly good. As someone who likes bossing and like really tries hard to get good at bossing, I found some of them pretty challenging. We're definitely very hit or miss with these. The way that I set up the outline here is the exact order that I would put them in ranking. I think Maven was done basically perfectly. They just ramped up her existing mechanics a little bit. You do have to manage the pools on the ground a little bit better, but other than that, it's just like Maven 2.0. It doesn't feel like there's nothing that's out of control with that fight. I would say it's actually just like perfectly done for an Uber version. Cortex is totally fine. Like you just fight 2x of the boss all the time. So it just like doubles the difficulty. You know, you can roll random modifiers on the map that kind of brick your build, but it's always been like that, even outside of Uber. That's just the way that Cortex works. But I think it's fine. You just have to fight 2 bosses at once, you know, dodge double mechanics, but there's no Cortex boss mechanics that are like the worst. I think Cortex was very well done. Really good intro to Uber bosses as well. I think that if you haven't tried one yet, that should be your first one. I think Uber Searing Exarch is totally fine, but the numbers are a little overscaled. Basically, all of his stuff is a little bit faster, a little bit more AoE. You have to dodge more. I do think the dogs, the Uber Argus in there is a little overtuned. You basically need like 30 million DPS or more to like get the dog off you within the ball phase. Fine, I guess. That he feels a little overtuned. But the rest of Uber Exarch feels totally fine. Uber Cirrus is really, really close. The overall ramping up of like, you know, tornado in the middle, twice as many beams, making everything a little bit faster. I think all of that is totally fine. The one thing that I hate is that Cirrus gets these pools on the ground that accumulate. Like the one change I would make to Uber Cirrus is just give those pools like a 10 or 20 second timer and make them disappear after a while. Other than that, I think all the other changes are fine. Uber Eater, I think, is mostly okay. He basically just gets like more and bigger tentacles. I just like the main reason that I don't like him very much is the visual clarity. In the regular Uber Eater, it's like okay, but it's still just like green on blue, and there's not like a very good delineation between everything. I find it a little messy. I don't love it. And especially like the fact that when the tentacles pull back, they do insane damage to the point like my build gets one shot, and I have like the tankiest build I've ever played. It gets one shot from those tentacles, at least when it's rolled up a little bit. I would just try to get some more visual clarity, maybe like calm down on tentacles here a little bit. Someone was watching too much hentai when they designed him. I think Uber Shaper is mostly okay. I'm okay with fighting a bunch of Shapers at once. I would request for them to like just tune down the purple bullet hell a little bit, make it a little bit more dodgeable, a little bit more manageable. It's like okay, and you can always just log out and then come back in if you want to. You can do Frost Shield and Molten Shell and basically tank it, but it's just like a little too much. I would like the bullet hell tuned down, but everything else is fine. And then my least favorite of the Uber boss fights, Uber Elder. It's just too messy. You can get into too many situations where, you know, you have to log if you're in hardcore, otherwise you die. I think the visual clarity of regular Uber Elder is like fine because there's so little going on. In Uber Elder, when you have Shaper teleporting around, you can have Elder doing his ring that will blow up 3 times. It's like just enough where it puts it over the threshold where I just find the fight uncomfortable and not fun to do. It is on the scale where I just find it annoying and I just would rather not do it. Those top 4 ones, I would always do them Uber, and then the bottom 3, I would just rather not do them Uber. So that's the way that I think about it. I fought about 100 Uber bosses this league, and the only good drop that I got was a single Massive Thread of Hope from Cirrus. All of the Uber Elders I fought, I don't think I even got a Watcher's Eye. You know, Maven has her guaranteed Orbs of Conflict, I think. But other than that, yeah, the loot's been really, really bad. I think for the difficulty, I would just give them each like a nice baseline item to drop that is at least going to be expected to be worth like 20 to 50 chaos to be worth that difficulty. Overall, I am happy they added something like this to the game, but it still needs tweaks if it's going to stay in. And then I saved the best for last. This, in my opinion, is what makes this league so good. This is player choice. So these are the new Atlas passives that allow you to turn off content that makes it more common to get other content. You can say, I hate Breach, I hate Legion, I hate Metamorph, I hate Ritual. I hate Blight. You can turn all of those off. I hate Abyss. I'm just thinking of all the league mechanics I hate. Turn all of those off, and then you get a ton more chance to get the mechanics you actually want to see. And it's been an absolute joy to know that the league mechanics that I see are the ones that I want to fight. Mapping has actually been taking a lot longer because I'm spending more time in the map having fun, engaging with the mechanics that I actually see. So while there is a ton of bloat in terms of the mechanics in the game, you can just turn off most of the ones that you don't like and just play how you want to play. I think there's a very good chance that this is like the #1 thing actually keeping people engaged, still playing this league and having a lot of fun. There's not much more to say. More of this, GGG, is what I would say. The beauty of Path of Exile is there is so much content in the game, but there's also so much that I don't want to do that feels tedious and annoying. And if you allowed me to just do the thing that I want to do, then, you know, we're good. So yeah, 10 out of 10 on this, like really just straight up 10 out of 10. Perfect execution with this. So yeah, I rambled way longer than I intended to, but my rating here is 10 exalts out of a Chris Wilson. This is a really, really good league. I would absolutely play it again. I would recommend it to everyone looking to get into Path of Exile. I think very easily the worst thing was the Arch-nemesis changes being in such a bad state on the launch weekend. They did address that very, very quickly, which, you know, thank God, but we need to make sure that the league launches go even better so we keep growing the community in this game. More people can recommend it to their friends to play, and GGG will make more leagues like this that are so fun. All right, that's going to be it for me today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all tomorrow. Goodbye.